Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are here today to speak with Seth Schwartz about his experience as a host dad in the Au Pair in America program. Hi, Seth.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for being here. Seth, we're just going to roll right into it. If you don't mind, can you tell the good folks about yourself, who you are, where you are, how many kiddos you have, and what kind of work do you do?
Well, as we've already covered, I'm Seth. Along with my wife, Susanna, we live in Cincinnati, Ohio. We have two wonderful daughters, Leah, who's 12, and Hannah, who is going to be 10 next month. And I'm a business litigation attorney. My wife, Dr. Susanna, is a veterinary surgeon.
Wow. I bet things feel very busy with two working parents and two school-age children in the home. Can you talk a little bit about your experience hosting au pairs so far? How long have you been hosting, and why have you found the Au Pair in America program to be a good fit for your family?
I'd love to, and you're absolutely right. It is a very busy household, and we're very clear with the au pairs before they come and join us that we're crazy, but we're fun. We have had 7 au pairs at this point, and the au pair program is really perfect for what our family needs. Before we talked about this, Susanna and I work full-time, and I call it full-time plus sometimes. We need somebody who's in our house and who's kind of more flexible like that. Because they're living in our house, we can't have a 6 o'clock nanny deadline because we never know whether we'll both be taken away. And even more than that, sometimes I travel for depositions and for work, and Susanna is on call about 50% of her life. We need somebody in the house who's able to be there so the children are not left totally alone. That's why the au pair program, along with all the other reasons, the au pair program works really well for us because it solves that problem, which is really very difficult to solve. But more important perhaps in these things is that my daughters get the opportunity with having an au pair to live and learn from responsible young female role models. This may shock everybody, but the learning how to become an adult is a lot more innately passed to my daughters from a 20-ish something individual than my old 45-year-old self. And providing my kids with role models on how to become an adult and how to behave as an adult from somebody who's closer to their age is a true value that sometimes I think gets overlooked.
Wow. So I think you just ticked off several of the benefits of the au pair program, the flexibility, having these positive role models, that's super helpful. Would you recommend the au pair program to other families? And if so, why?
Yeah, I would recommend it, and I have many, many times. The au pair program is an exchange, and there's a lot of value that comes in that exchange between the parties. I think it's more on the ground kind of stuff. I think it helps solve a lot of the problems that plague modern families. In the old days, you used to hear stories about how our parents would be able to be home at 5 or 6 every night because that's when work ended. And I don't think modern life is like that for a lot of people. And that makes stuff like getting home on time from a work day if something gets important, having childcare readily available, or stuff like soccer practice, and getting 2 kids to soccer practice or 1 kid to soccer practice at one place and 1 kid somewhere else. Those are real challenges for a lot of families. The au pair program really helps solve those because you have another adult who is both a driver and responsible and able to be there because they're part of the household. And that to me is at least on the ground, the things that are most important. But frankly, I think some of the intangible benefits are even more important.
So you mentioned having a family member, somebody else that's part of your household, and I know that is so important. I'm going to ask you to speak about yourself a little bit here. I heard a rumor that you had an au pair as a child as well. Can you talk a little bit about being a host kid and how that experience influenced your family's decision to host au pairs for your children?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to. And my mom deserves all the credit here. My mom had 3 boys. And if you might imagine having a household of 3 boys, and maybe many families out here experience this, can be a little crazy. And so she decided that she wanted to have an au pair, both for the cultural exchange aspect of it, and because she wanted help driving to 3 different soccer practices at once. So I grew up with 7 French au pairs. This is before agencies like Au Pair in America existed. There weren't strict au pair programs, so my mother would find individuals way before the internet. I don't know how the heck she did it. And these individuals lived with us, like I said, for 7 years, all my formative years that I can remember, really. And they were our big sisters, and they were part of our extended family, and they really are part of our extended family to this day. The au pairs that I grew up with still come to the United States with their kids, and they'll stay with us. My parents had a house on the beach for a while, and they would come over and stay in the summer and live with us, and because they're our friends and they're our family. Even to the point that 2 years ago, my whole nuclear family, so my father and mother, my brothers, myself, our wives, and all of our kids, 13 Schwartzes, went to France for 3 weeks. And the purpose of going to France was to visit our 7 au pairs and their families, and then visit some of my au pairs who are also from France. And I can talk about that in a second. We visited their families. So one of my au pairs, when I was a kid, had a daughter. Her daughter became our au pair, so 2 generations of the same family. And her daughter's friends were also our au pair. Her daughter's best friend said, "This looks like fun. I want to go and do it." So they became our next au pair. So we have had au pair relationships that span generations. And when those au pairs are living in our house, we always tell them, if your family wants to come and visit, we'd love to host them. It's always exciting to meet new people and to have them kind of show them American things. And we've had those opportunities. So when we went to France, my goodness, the reception was amazing. I've never eaten like that before in my life.
You have mentioned cultural exchange several times. Can you talk about the ways that you kind of build that into your own family? How do you welcome an au pair? How do you make sure that she feels like a true member of your family?
I think that one of the things we do, and one of the things I love to do, when a new au pair comes, especially from if they haven't been to the United States before, there's so many things we have here that they don't have. I'll give you one example would be something like Topgolf in a positive way, and learning from her to watch her experience for the first time is really beneficial for all of us. It's exciting and it's fun. And the other thing we do is a lot of food. There's all of the kinds of Americanized food don't exist, a lot of them, in different parts of Europe. So for example, many of our pairs have never had Americanized Chinese food. They've never been to a real 50s style recreation diner to see what it was like in the 50s in the United States. And so we make a point of, okay, tonight we're going out to experience a 50s diner. Tonight we're going out to do this. And always included in that is we go and try the au pair's Americanized food. So for example, we had a German au pair and we went to an Americanized German restaurant. And it's always fun to hear them say, "This is not how it is. This is not German food. This is a fake recreation of German food." And we get to talk about that. And I get to have my daughters learn about the cultural exchange. We talk about how this doesn't exist in their country and why it's different. And I believe my daughters get a really good idea that the world is not the same homogeneousness that America may be, but there are other places in the world that are interesting to go and to see, and that have kind of different sorts of foods and different sorts of styles, and I think they learn a lot from that stuff.
What a lesson for your children. I just think it's always interesting to see America through the eyes of a visitor. So let's shift gears a bit and talk a little bit about balance. Can you talk about how you balance your expectations as a family from a childcare perspective with the au pair's desire to see the U.S. and have that cultural exchange experience? So
it's a great question, and this is key to me. This is why au pairs work, I believe, really well in our family. And we've had 7, so I think I've got some evidence for it, and why sometimes they don't work. The au pair program, from my perception, is really a lot of times influenced by my mom and how she ran it when she had au pairs. And to our experience, it's an exchange. A domestic child care worker wouldn't provide nearly the same flexibility and wouldn't provide nearly the same number of hours for the cost. The exchange here is the au pair is coming over and wanting to learn American culture, be able to experience a different style of living, to be able to have a host family that embraces that au pair, and to be able to travel and kind of see the world. And in exchange, they're providing their services and living in your house. For me, it's a family experience. When I'm inviting an au pair to come over, I'm inviting that au pair to be part of our family for this year. That means as an adult, because the way I look at it is, if you're taking care of my children, you are responsible for the most important thing in the world to me. In which case, I can't treat you like a child, because I'm trusting you with the most adult responsibility that I know. So I look at it as a junior adult in the house who is there to be a mentor, a big sister to my kids, and to be part of our family. And that means that when we have family dinners, you're always invited, and I hope you're there, and I really do, because I like having that person at our family dinners. When we go out to dinner, she's always invited, and hopefully she's coming with us, and we all go out together. And even traveling, when we travel, we're a family that likes to ski a lot. When we travel out west, we usually bring our au pair with us, and we have the au pair ski lessons, and it's fun to watch the au pairs who had never skied before. But I will tell you, one of our French au pairs was from the Swiss Alps, and she was probably 5'2". And when she got on the slopes, she kicked all of our butts. She was amazing as a skier, and it was a fun experience. And my wife and I had the great time of skiing with her. So things I do with the au pair is, I know that I have an obligation to that au pair. I have an obligation to assist that au pair in traveling, in seeing the United States, and experience American culture. Part of that I do with the restaurants, for example, because I'm showing American culture and American food. But the other part of that, from my perspective, is that I'm going to help research flights. I'm going to help research travel information. I'm going to find the hotels that aren't in the bad part of Chicago for them to go and visit Chicago, even if it costs $10 or $15 more a night. I'm going to point them how to go about doing this, give them step-by-step instructions on how to kind of travel and what to look for and what to find, and really try to make it easier for them. And on the same lines, if the au pair ever has something that is very important for her to do, say on a Friday night for a cultural program, and my wife and I have plans that Friday night, we'll hire a babysitter, because it's important for me to provide that au pair nearly as much as I possibly can, because I want her to provide to us what I want. Which is responsible older sistering of our children. And that's where I see the exchange.
Wow, that sounds like the definition of a win-win. You have identified a way to support this person who's supporting your family.
When it comes to rules and household stuff, I treat them like an adult. We don't have curfews. We don't have anything. We actually have one rule, and that is no significant others. If you date somebody, don't date them in my house. That's the one rule we have. Other than that, it's just respect. Another thing is that au pairs make friends with other au pairs generally. And I tell our au pairs, this is your house. Bring your au pair friends over here. Come over here and make dinner. So let us know you're having dinner and you want to cook and you want to use the kitchen and you want to have an au pair feast with your friends. I love that. Sit outside and talk. And I want my kids to see that. I want them to see, because what's better than one role model, bigger sister? Two. And last night, our current au pair, who's Polish, her Polish au pair friend, reached the end of her au pair days. She came over to our house for 3 hours to say goodbye to our family after she said goodbye to her family. Why? Because we were her second host family. And that to me is a victory, because my daughter cried when somebody else's au pair was leaving. and so that to me shows the relationship they forged.
Can you give your tips based on your experience on how an au pair and host family can approach any concerns that might come up throughout the year?
I don't take the approach of, I am your host dad, so you do what I say. I never take that approach, because I'm never going to be this young lady's father, and nor do I really want to be. I'd rather be, maybe more of a quasi-step parent role or just a host dad role. What I do try to say is, look, here's what I expect, and here's why it's reasonable. This au pair has traveled halfway around the world with very little funds, and she needs her host family to support her, to welcome her, and to enable her to be successful, and she will. She did not come here because she wants to not be successful at doing her job. So the au pair who comes, I would say the vast majority, I haven't found one that hasn't, but it's possible, is desperate to really make this host-family relationship work. And it's up to me to enable that because I'm the only one who can do that from my perspective. When I've seen other families with failed host-parent relationships, I usually find it's the host family's fault because I usually think that they don't understand that there's a very minor language barrier, that you have to speak slower. And if you don't see understanding on people's face, sometimes explain things differently, that you need to slow down and take the time to build that relationship, especially early on. And they have to understand that this 20-year-old person is, 20 years old. I'm not sure I would trust myself with this kind of responsibility when I was 20 years old, but this is a 20-year-old, a lot of times much more responsible than I was at that age. But they're not going to do everything perfectly. They're not going to understand certain things that we take for granted as we're older. They're 20. And so I get to help them grow. One of the greatest satisfactions for me, and I mean this entirely, this is not said for the purpose of this interview, is that these individuals become family to me, and I get to watch them grow. I get to watch them grow when they come as kind of scared, more timid, late teenagers into really young ladies. And they grow tremendously throughout this year. And I take huge satisfaction in their growth. And then at the end, before they leave, I sit down and talk to them about the rest of their life and what they're going to do and who they want to become and what lessons they can take away from their experience here. To me, it's the best part of the experience, that being able to give back.
It sounds like you have nailed the secret formula for au pair host family success: communication plus empathy plus understanding. I have one final fun question for you. We've talked time and time again about cultural exchange. So I would love to know, is there something that you and your family have learned from an au pair about her country, her culture, her language, her customs?
So there are so many from music. The au pairs exchange music with my daughters, and they say what's popular and where they come from, and they listen to what's popular here. One thing that I do with the au pairs I do a lot of the cooking around our house. I like to cook, and so they cook with me, and I teach them how to cook. Another thing I learned from my mom, and we cook together, and I try to make some of their foods. But I think that the one thing that's most important is very small: Uno, the card game. The French play Uno a different way. They've got the French style where they alter the rules. And we've adopted the French style in our family. And we as a family play Uno 3 or 4 nights a week, 1 or 2 of us or all of us, with the au pair, without the au pair. And sometimes we even make French crepes with Nutella inside of them, which is also something. We used to have Crepe Wednesdays with our au pairs, and something we borrowed from our French au pairs. It's really become part of our life and our family. And I think that that's the real value of this exchange.
French Uno and crepe night. You heard it here first, folks. All right, I have a lightning round question for you, Seth. Are you ready?
All right, I'm ready for a lightning round.
So if you had to describe the au pair program in one word or phrase, what would it be?
So I think I'm going to go old school on this one. I'm going to go back to the Sly and the Family Stone and say, we are family.
We are family. Who are we to argue with Sly? So that is all the time we have for today. Big thanks to Seth Schwartz for sharing your host family stories with us. Thank you out there for listening. And if you have questions or would like to learn more about hosting an au pair yourself, please visit aupairinamerica.com. Thanks again.